Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 10th episode of the Soccer Scene with Sport Limerick. Delighted once again to be joined by Jason and Noel O'Connor. And Jason, we'll start with yourself this evening. We've a lot to get through on tonight's show, but first and definitely not least would be the 0-0 draw for Treaty United against Bray Wanderers last week. Treaty now unbeaten in 3 games, Jason, and I suppose the response from the Cork game, which everyone was talking about, has been huge, to be fair.
It's been massive, Adrian. There's no doubt. I think it's a fantastic point in Bray. Treaty will look at Bray, I suppose, similar to what we do, as a competitor, I suppose, for them playoff spots. Even this early, Adrian, you'd have to be looking that way along for as well in that little pack. So away from home, it's a really, really good result. I suppose both teams had chances, but overall, I think everyone would agree it was a fair enough result. You said it there, 2 clean sheets on the bounce, now unbeaten in 3, and going into a run of games, Adrian, I suppose that could extend that unbeaten run, to maybe 5 or 6, which would do wonders for confidence within the group, because I suppose that's what clean sheets give you, Adrian. They give you a belief, I suppose, that you're going to get something out of the game, in every game. And look, they were good value for the point, so they'll take it and move on.
Yeah, certainly. And Noel, because there's only been previously to this between Bray and Treaty in their 3 meetings, 3 goals, it was hardly surprising that there wasn't a flurry of chances or goals in the game. It was a very tight, cagey affair for the most part. But at the end of the day, as Jason said, it certainly looks like a very good point in this league in general, as we've seen and heard on many occasions. Getting points against especially rivals for the playoffs is a good result.
No, it was good, and they were very compact and very secure, I thought. It is a different Bray team to what we saw last year, where they kept the ball, a lot of sideways passing back and forth in and out. I thought the current Bray team, if you like, is much more enthusiastic about getting the ball forward a little bit earlier, with Pat Devlin there now. I did think they were very lively and enthusiastic, but certainly kind of limited as well. They were missing Hugh Douglas and Curtis Byrne, and they really lacked a cutting edge. But I thought Treaty were very comfortable. They played the game the right way. They were very cagey away from home, and they were very patient. And they did get a couple of chances that they just couldn't convert to. It wasn't a game that had a lot of chances, but certainly, as Jason said, it's another clean sheet. It's another result, and they're slowly building that kind of confidence and resilience. And a solid back 5, similar enough to last year, and 2 solid central midfielders is certainly a good foundation for them in the next few games.
Yeah, there certainly has been an improvement in performance, and in the defensive area, Jason, it's fair to say we could have been forgiven for thinking that things might go downhill, particularly when Sean Gearns was injured and now is unavailable for the next couple of games as well. So looking at Joe Gorman, Mark Walsh, Joe Gorman in particular has responded quite well in recent games to criticism he received too. So they've struck up a good partnership. And as Noel said, the back 5 looks a lot more solid at the moment.
It does, Adrian, most definitely, and I suppose the improvement since the Cork game is night and day. It really is. And that's down to the change in formation and tactics, Adrian. I certainly believe that. And Tommy makes them decisions, players win games. That's a favourite saying of mine, I suppose, but that's because players carry out, the instructions given to them, but when the instructions are clear, the roles are defined in black and white, I suppose, conversations with the players and the game eventualities are all covered. Then players become more confident in what they're doing. The formation suits the players. There's no doubt about that, and I suppose when the results go against you, Adrian, and performance are dipping, that's when the manager really comes to the party, I suppose, in the public eye, and he gets questioned, but Tommy's responded excellently. He made the changes, they're reaping the results. Playing out from the back from restarts has stopped. I think that certainly helped Joe Gorman in particular. It's a 4-4-2, so the attack is now a lot more threatening. Mark Ludden and Charlie Fleming getting forward way more than they were in the first couple of games, and that's without making the team vulnerable on transitions as well, Adrian. So that's down to the organisation. You said it there, Mark Walsh looks very solid next to Joe Gorman, and Joe Gorman's getting fitter by the week, I suppose. But really, for me, it's that midfield area. You know, it looks a lot more coherent to Adrian. You know, and whether it's Callum and Joe Collins or whoever comes in when changes are made, they look a lot surer of their roles. You know, in that unit. That's including the wide players. Matt Keane, when he's in the side, is a massive plus. I think he's someone who's hugely underrated. You know, and as I said, the performance, the results, the changes. You know, it's night and day since the Cork game. You know, and that's down to Tommy primarily. So he deserves huge credit.
Yeah, and on another positive note, Noel, we saw the return of Jack Lynch, who hasn't played a competitive game as well since UCD last year. I know he was injured in Killarney earlier on in the pre-season campaign and hadn't featured at all since. I know he came on in an unfamiliar, maybe an attacking role as such, once Dean George further up the field. But, you know, to come in, people were maybe questioning the treaty midfield and the couple of defeats that they did have. But certainly with Jack coming back in there, like, the competition for places now is bigger now than ever. Yeah,
and another challenge for the manager as well, because as Jason rightly pointed out, it has been the change of formation. You know, he was championing playing two up front. I was kind of anxious that there was a settled two in the middle, what I call a good solid platform, and that certainly came in the guys of Callum McNamara and Joe Collins. And you know, we all know how good Jack Lynch is, and the captain of the team had a great season last year. Certainly missed him at the start of this year, and it's a decision now for Tommy how he accommodates him in the team, and I do think that he's got to stick to that too. And I think if he reverts back to a 3, well, then, you know, he might be bringing a bit of trouble on himself. And you have the likes of Conor Melody as well, who must be near fitness, and he's the guy I'd like to see get a run up as part of a front two as well, particularly with Enda Kern, because they're two guys that are well able to play the game, and certainly two very physical guys. And obviously there must be a fairly good understanding between them with their history of playing together at Galway United as well. So some big decisions, but decisions that you certainly want. But I think whatever decision Tommy makes, I think it's very important that he sticks to that 2 in the middle and 2 up front. I think that's going to be very important for the team as a whole.
And we will discuss the approach to the games over the weekend in a few minutes. But Jason, I know that when Jack was speaking after the game, he was obviously delighted to be back amongst the team. He also said that he feels he can't really impact the game. He's not the type of person that can impact the game from off the field as a captain, you know, as an off-field captain. So you'd imagine his coming back into the team will have a positive impact throughout the squad now.
Oh, definitely. It's like a new signing, Adrian, really, because before the break game, we hadn't seen Jack, you know, in the league. So it's a fantastic addition and a welcome headache, I suppose, for Tommy. Jack's an excellent player, Adrian, at this level, very, very professional in his approach. You know, you can see he's been out for a while, but he obviously lives the life of a footballer, you know, never comes back overweight or out of condition, you know, and he can play in a number of positions. You know, he'd fit perfectly into that 4-4-2 formation for me. You know, he gives you the option, I suppose, to revert to 4-3-3. I'd be in agreement with Noel. I certainly wouldn't be reverting back to 4-3-3. But Jack can fit into both formations. You know, that's down to his game intelligence, Adrian. It's very, very high. He'll add goals, he'll add experience to people around him. And I suppose, look, when you look in the middle, I suppose the one thing that's missing, and I think it's something that Jack could possibly bring, is controlling the tempo of the game from the middle of the park. When do we have to speed it up? Excuse me. When do we have to slow it down? And, you know, and that stuff that the likes of Callum McNamara, a young player, could learn from Jack, I suppose, really, and make part of his skill set, because controlling the tempo of the game is invaluable, really, when you're looking at a midfield player. But yeah, great to have Jack back. I'm a big fan of his. I think everyone knows that. So excited to see him back in the jersey.
Yeah, it certainly is exciting, and you'd imagine that he'll probably be eased into games, Noel. And speaking of games coming up, you've got Athlone Town for the second time in 11 days playing Treaty, you know, the reverse fixture this time around in Lizzie Woolen. I suppose the big news to come out of Athlone this week, though, was off the pitch, Noel, with the departure, and the very quick departure in our eyes anyway, at least, and many others to be fair, of Martin Russell, the manager at Athlone. I mean, it seems like it must have been something, you know, maybe off the pitch, in my opinion, Noel, because realistically, I don't know how, if it was the board that wanted more results, or, you know, because if you look at that squad, you'd imagine that finishing off the bottom of the table would be an achievement, with all due respect to them.
You would have thought that, and you look at the bare bones of it, 1 draw in 8 games, you know, it doesn't look great. But certainly, and I've seen him play 3 times recently, there was certainly an improvement. I saw them having a very lively draw with Bray. You know, either team could have won it. Athlone could have won it. And I thought they did very well against Galway United. It was harder to judge them against Treaty on that Monday night because they had played on the Friday night. So I didn't really expect a whole lot from them. But it was difficult to see what they expected from that group. I said to myself, if they finish ahead of Cove, is probably the realistic goal for them this season. They seem to have a fairly settled back four. Stephen Kenny, even though I name-checked him as David O'Leary in the last podcast because of their similar statures, but certainly I thought he was playing very well in midfield, and they had a decent front three, like, with a bit of pace, and you would have felt, because of their age profile, particularly that front three, that they'd only get better, you know, from playing games. But maybe we'll find out. But it's hard to believe that it was anything to do with, you know, the week-to-week performances of the team. There may be something else going on there in the background.
I certainly thought so. I mean, we did all have Athlone to finish bottom, if I'm correct on that, in the league this year. But Jason, you were speaking about how, you know, Martin, sometimes to his own detriment, never changed his style, and you know, it was total football all the time. I have to say, because of how, you know, how much I admired him even when he was at Limerick, even though, you know, obviously there was relegation during the time as well, I was disappointed to see that he has left Athlone so quickly now, especially because he'd also left Bray so quickly in his last job. You wouldn't like to see that being Martin's last involvement at League Board Devil.
No, definitely not. I'd echo that, Adrian. I was disappointed to see him depart the league again. You know, I'm not sure if he's in the running for another job somewhere or anything, but Athlone, similar to last year, changing managers mid-season, you know, and it's not a sign of stability in the club, Adrian. That would be the worrying part for me. You know, it can't be based on results. I'd agree with yourself and Noel there. It's very last minute for Martin assembling a squad, you know, but if you look at their last 3 managers, they're all solid football men, Adrian. You know, Adrian Carberry, Paul Doolan, and now Martin Russell. They're all very respected men in the game, you know, and if all 3 have struggled to make things work there, then there's a huge job on for somebody. The next man in the door is going to have a very, very big job on his hands. You know, Treaty, it'll play into their hands, I think. You know, looking at the game, it's a game they'll certainly expect to win. You know, we can only assume there won't be a change in formation. You know, if there isn't a change in formation, I think they should pick up another 3 points.
Yeah, it was brought to my attention, Noel, that this is the 4th manager in the 4 times Treaty have played Athlone. Sorry, this will be the 5th time, but it had 4 managers against them from Athlone, which seems quite incredible in such a short period of time. But as you mentioned earlier, they will have threats, Athlone. I suppose playing them for a second time in 11 days, do you think that'll be detrimental, or will that be an advantage for Treaty?
Yeah, I'm not so sure it'll be an advantage, and it is difficult when you play, you know, the same team over a shorter period of time. I did mention that Treaty had a big advantage playing them the last time, as they had a rest, whereas Athlone had played on the Friday night a couple of days before it. I still think Treaty are certainly strong enough to win that game. You'd hardly think that the Athlone squad are over the moon that Martin Russell is gone by any means. And, you know, you talk about a managerial bounce, and I'm not so sure it's going to happen there. The only difference between this and the last time is that Athlone are going to be a bit fresher, but whether they have enough to, you know, to derail Treaty this weekend, I really doubt it, and I certainly would agree with Jason. Expect Treaty to pick up the 3 points.
Yeah, there's a clean sweep on that, because I do expect Treaty to beat Athlone as well this weekend. But I suppose all those players that went in with Athlone, Jason, bar 4 of them were Martin Russell signings, and one of those in particular, Stephen Kenny, who seems to be the playmaker at Athlone, will probably feel a bit disgruntled because he came in probably under the pretense of playing for Martin as well. But they do have threats, as I said, the likes of Stephen Kenny, Carlton Ubanuzu, just to name two. So, and they showed that at the Markets Field, to be fair.
They do have threats, Adrian. There's no doubt about it. But the way Treaty are set up, and the clean sheets and the confidence growing, as Noel rightly said against Bray, they were very solid up the middle of the pitch. And I think if they continue in that vein, they should certainly have enough to take the 3 points. You rightly said a lot of Martin signings are there, and Noel said it. They won't be happy to see Martin going. So you'd imagine that morale would be even lower than it was, Adrian, in the camp. So it's a good time, I believe, for Treaty to play him.
Yeah, I do agree with that myself. Noel, there is a challenge, I suppose, in the fact that we have bank holidays because of the extra games this season on bank holidays in every weekend. You have a game now in the first division. They have Wexford coming up at the Markets Field, Treaty, on the Monday straight afterwards. Judging by the way the league is, Noel, and the old mantra of you don't really know what you're going to get in every game, I have to say I would be on the side of maybe 4 points from these games would be a very good return.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. Particularly looking at the fixture that Wexford have, they have Cove, which I suppose if you wanted to pick a fixture, to have over a short period of time with 2 games, it's certainly not the worst one to have. And in the back of Wexford's mind, they'll be thinking of what happened the first game of the season. Jason has said night and day a few times, and certainly the performance of Wexford since that match has been kind of night and day as well. 2 very, very good draws with Bray Wanderers and a very good draw last week with Galway United shows that they've certainly done something at the back to shore it up. They do have some attacking threats, and looking at their bench every week so far with everyone fit, they certainly have options off the bench. It'll certainly be a lot more difficult opposition, I think, for Treaty than at Lone will be, and the fact that both of them have played on the Friday night will certainly negate any advantage in terms of freshness as well. And I can see that game ending up as a draw.
Yeah, many people watching this, Jason, might turn around and say that having beaten Wexford 5-1 in Ferdy Carrick Park and obviously beaten Athlone recently, and Athlone being bottom of the league, that us talking about only getting the 4 points in that period might be overcautious. What do you think?
Possibly, Adrian, but I think Treaty would be good for the win against Wexford myself. There's no doubt, and Wexford have had a very, very good season so far. They have goal threats. I've referred to them as a breath of fresh air to the league this year, and I certainly believe that and stand over it. How they approach their games, they don't try to draw games, Adrian. They go for wins. I think Treaty caught them on the hop in the first night of the season. I don't think there'll be the same amount of goals in it, but I do believe that Treaty are good enough to beat Wexford at home, and I think they will. Yeah,
and I know that we do have 8 games over the bank holiday. We're only going to go for the prediction league for the games on the Friday this weekend. I will put up our predictions for the Monday games over the weekend, but otherwise we'd probably be here all night talking about predictions alone. So we'll go for the 4 games that are coming up earlier in the weekend on this Easter bank holiday. And Jason, before we came on air, we were discussing it, but you've relinquished your lead in the last couple of weeks now. Noel O'Connor has taken over the mantra. Noel, Jason said that that's where he wants you. I'm not so sure. I think that could be mind games.
Maybe a little bit of mind games, but I wouldn't expect anything less from Jason. But all I say, it's very early in the season, and there's a long road ahead. So we'll just get over this weekend and see how we get on.
Jeez, that's like a throwback to listen to Noel O'Connor back in the early 2000s and in mid 2000s with Limerick FC. But he's Noel O'Connor on 40 points, Jason 38, and myself further back on 36. But it has got a lot tighter than it was a few weeks ago, and we've all went for Treaty to pick up a result against Athlone. But to move on to the next game, we start with yourself, Jason. We've Cork versus Bray. I know myself, I went for Cork once again. What's your own verdict?
Yeah, I went for Cork, Adrian. I'm becoming their biggest fan. I think a few people have said to me lately, every week, but you can't argue with what they're churning out, Adrian. You can't. It's fantastic. I keep saying it. It's the defensive record really that their success so far has been built on. It really has. Very, very solid at the back, and they'll be looking at the Waterford and Galway game as well, Adrian, as an opportunity maybe to open up a little bit of a gap at the top, which I wouldn't expect Colin Healy's side to slip up, especially at home. I think they'll be good for the win.
Noel, is that a triple home win?
I think it has to be. I mean, look at the result. The first game of the season where Cork beat Bray 6-0. It's hard to see that kind of a turnaround. I thought that Bray were quite enthusiastic, but certainly limited, and they don't have the firepower that Cork have. And the fact that Cork are at home on a bank holiday weekend, it's hard to see anything else. Only the 3 points for Cork.
Yeah, we'll just stick with yourself, Noel, for the next one. We have Waterford hosting Galway in the clash of two of the big three, as they were predicted at the start of the season. Galway obviously with a disappointing home result against Wexford, when many thought they would win that game. Waterford bounced back from a disappointing spell themselves with a good win in Cove. I've went for the draw myself, and I know you've benefited from some brave draws, but this wouldn't be going down as a brave draw, I know, to be honest. But what's your own verdict?
Yeah, my own verdict is I fancy Waterford actually to win this game. I think they've had a bit of a wobble, if you like, and they have a fine side with a lot of attack and threat, and I think they're not afraid to kind of use it. I just feel that there's a bit of momentum there, a small bit. Galway are still kind of stuttering a little bit with their results. They'll be disappointed with the 1-1 draw with Wexford, and there's transfer talk about their hottest prospect, if you like, Alex Murphy, who has been linked with a move to Newcastle United, and I know he was in talks with them in the last couple of days, and I just think that's a small bit of a distraction for them, and I think the Waterford just might sneak a win there. And
Jason, yourself?
I'm going to go with you, Adrian, in the draw. The reason being, I just think both sides know that a defeat will dent their title hopes, even this early, Adrian. Waterford bounced back last week versus Cove. We know that. They was taking the run of 3 games without a win, so they won't want to lose at home. Galway, as you said, dropped 2 points last week and only equalised in the 88th minute. They're very reliant on Stephen Walsh. We can see that, but they won't want to lose this one, Adrian, and knowing John Caulfield, he's not going to allow that to happen too easily. I was tempted to go for the Waterford win, but I just think both teams' fear of defeat could cause too much caution, I suppose, and to separate them. So I'm going to go for the draw.
That was my own opinion as well. Wexford and Cove, Jason, this is the first time that I've ever went for 50% of my results being draws, but I went for a draw in Wexford and Cove, sitting on the fence a bit here as well. What about yourself?
No, I think Wexford will have too much for them, Adrian. I do, to be honest, high tempo at home. And it would give them a chance even to leapfrog Bray in the table, so they'll have an eye on that as well. They might be just starting, I suppose, people might be just seeing them as that surprise package of the season, and they'll be thinking that themselves and be seeing how high up in the table they can go. They play with no fear. We know that. They're very well organised. I just think they'll have too much firepower for Cove, Adrian.
And what about yourself, Noel?
Yeah, I think in Wexford, give them a big advantage. I think they do have too much firepower, and I think, Cove, after getting a good hiding at home last week, won't be in a great position, and they certainly are ambitious this year to do well. They'll be buoyed up with that point in Galway, and I think they will have too much for Cove, so I'll certainly go for a Wexford win there.
Yeah, and I suppose just to finish the show, it'd be worth mentioning that the local Limerick District Premier Division title race is really hotting up, it must be said. Fairview Rangers went and beat FAI Junior Cup semi-finalists Pike Rovers in their own ground. But I suppose the big story being that Ballinanty Rovers have rightly dragged themselves back into this title race. They're now just 1 point behind Fairview following another win on Sunday, but also going to the backyard of Pike and Fairview since the turn of the year and winning, and also winning the 2E Cup. Jason, I know that you may know of Dave Dunphy from maybe junior battles and the likes, but he really has seriously instilled a commitment and dedication to the cause. Hard-working team there, Ballinanty. They can't be faulted for that. And I suppose they might be looking at it thinking that maybe Conor Ellis, after scoring 2 goals, might be the difference maker coming into the running.
He certainly could be, Adrian. We know about his quality, and he hasn't played a whole pile for them this season. But when he's on form at junior level, he's unstoppable really at times. Pike can be very disappointed to lose out to Fairview again. Jason Purcell seems to have a bit of a hoodoo over Robbie Williams, I think. He's he seems to turn them over when anytime they play him. Great to see Bala doing well. They're a fantastic club. You rightly said as well about Dave Dunphy, Nolan know him, and so would yourself. A real football man, and a real Balnanty man. So delighted to see them doing well. Can they overtake Fairview? It's a massive ask. It really is, Adrian. Fairview, for me, still favourites for the league.
It certainly will be an interesting climax to the season in the Limerick District League overall, with many divisional cup matches, relegations, promotions, the whole lot. So it does promise to be exciting, and we will cover that in due course. And also, obviously, come back next week. We'll have a lot to discuss. We'll have 2 games for Treaty United to digest as well. So we hope you can join us next week. And we once again thanks to Jason and Noel, for their